Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Agreeable Gray Area podcast. As always, I'm your host, Elle. So, this episode is episode 10, and as you might have already known from, previous episodes, I mentioned that episode 10 is the episode that I will be sharing it with everyone, not just the few of you who have, been listening up until now. I was, of course, reluctant to do this episode since I've made that promise to myself at like the very beginning. I can't even remember exactly when I made that promise to myself. But I wanted to talk about doing things scared. And if you follow the Melanated Council, a live stream podcast I do with Ron and Toby every Tuesday night on YouTube and Twitch, then you've definitely heard me mention this several times. Doing things scared means if there's something that you really want to do, chances are you're very afraid of doing it. So you might as well just do that thing scared, because there's never going to be a time where you're going to be 110% ready. All the stars are going to align and you're just going to, be at your absolute best doing whatever it is that you want to do. It can be, working out, it can be starting a podcast, it can be learning how to swim, whatever that thing is. You're never going to be 100% ready to, just start that thing. So you just have to start it. One of my favorite books that was completely life-changing to me is The War of Art. Not to be confused with The Art of War by Sun Tzu, but The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. It's a really short book, and like the chapters are sometimes even like a paragraph long or like a page and a half. It's meant to be read quickly. And the premise of the book is that there's this, it's like a villain, quote unquote. The villain of the book is this force called resistance. And resistance isn't supposed to help you, and it isn't supposed to stop you either from doing whatever it is that you're trying to do. Resistance's sole purpose is to keep things as they are. So if you're working a job and you get paid enough to pay all your bills and, to put food on the table and, to take a vacation here and there, resistance will tell you not to look for another job or a better paying job. Resistance will tell you not to, go to coffee shops on the weekend to study and how to be better at your profession. Resistance will give you every excuse, every lie, everything to tell yourself that what you're doing right now is A-okay. And resistance isn't wrong. Like if you feel as though you have another purpose, if you feel that you have some kind of drive, some, unexplainable drive to do something else or to do something that's really outside of what it is that you're already doing, it could even be slightly outside of what you're doing. Resistance will tell you, nah, dude, don't do that. You're fine. Everything's okay. Like your mom is, stressed out with your brother. You have to, worry about that. Your kid is, doing so great in school. You got to just focus on making sure that your kid is doing great. The grass needs to be cut right now and you can't do whatever it is, like you get the point. So in order to get to the next level, we have to fight resistance. We have to recognize what resistance is and we have to fight it. And we have to just push past that, because resistance will, tell you every single thing that you want to hear in order to not do the thing that is like your true calling. I've wanted to start a podcast since 2014. And recently I was reminded of that, kind of recently I reconnected with an old friend from a previous job whom I met in 2014. You know, like he's living in New York, living out his dream. And funny enough, I actually helped him get back on track into, doing his own, for working on his own dream. He would, like, according to him, he would say this. I'm not like, tooting my own horn. He has told other people that I've helped him in really pursuing his job, his, passion for being a fashion photographer. So he is doing photography in New York, as we speak. So he was at a job in South Florida with me, and he actually introduced me to the book, The War of Art. He actually let me borrow his copy. Totally changed my life. Bought a copy for myself, read the book, and like back then I was like not much of a reader. So the fact that that book had actually like held my attention to the point that it really changed my life was unimaginable, especially at that time. Like I had no patience for reading, especially in 2014. So we reconnected recently, me and, my friend from a previous job. And he asked me if I was still doing a podcast. There was like, if I started that podcast. And I was so embarrassed because I hadn't. And it was just something that I've always wanted to like pursue. And I totally forgot that it's something that I really wanted to pursue on my own. I figured doing the Melanated Council podcast was, enough to, I guess, quench my need for that sort of creativity in terms of a podcast. And I was content, but I didn't realize I wasn't fulfilled. It's like when you're hungry and you're really in the mood for like a big juicy steak, but then somebody orders a pizza and like you love pizza and like this quenches your hunger, like this satiates you, but you can't get that steak out of your mind. And I kind of just totally forgot about really wanting a steak. I didn't totally forget. It was just something that I felt like was just way out of my wheelhouse. I met my friend Gil like March of this year, and he really just like pushed me to just really start this podcast. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try. So this mic that I'm using, this Shure microphone, not like the famous one, like the SM7B. I'm using an MV7, which is still like, it's based off of the SM7B. It's still like a fantastic microphone. I love it a lot. But Gil, told me to like buy this microphone, and I was like, all right, cool. I'll buy this. It was on sale. And I bought it April 25th. I made sure to look that up on Amazon, the exact date of when I bought it, because I didn't create the first episode of this podcast until July 21st. So I've had this mic, this glorious, amazing mic, for 3 months, just chilling. And I'd give myself excuses like, oh, I'm still trying to get to know the mic. I'm still, trying to figure things out. I got to get to know Audacity first, as if I didn't already know how to use Audacity. Of course, it would take time, but I knew it wasn't going to take that long. Like when it comes to like tech like this, I'm a very quick learner. I was procrastinating. I was scared. I was very terrified. I kept telling myself every little thing about like, why should I start a podcast? The hell do I know? I'm no expert, But then, funny enough, I reminded myself of how there's like people on YouTube convincing people that the earth is flat, or like, I don't know, like convincing people that like there's like lizard people or things. I don't know, like, I mean, whatever your conspiracy cup of tea is, happily drink it. I don't really give a shit anymore. But it just sort of made me realize that, there are people out there who are, for lack of a better term, just like fucking nuts, like doing this. And I'm like, I'm kind of smart. Like there isn't anything that they're doing that I can't do. It's not like they have a special thing, like, I guess like their special thing would be like their charm, their charisma, their ability to hold an audience, the ability to find their audience. But I was just too scared to start. I've mentioned this before. So a couple of months prior to me meeting my friend from 2014, my cousin had died in a car accident Christmas morning of 2013. And I know I've briefly mentioned this on the podcast before. My cousin and I were the same age. He would have been 31 November 11th. And every year when it's his birthday and every year when it's Christmas, it just like, it reminds me that you gotta live your life. My cousin would always be doing things that he really liked to do. And I was just always afraid of doing the things that I wanted to try to do. So like when he passed, it really just opened my eyes to realizing that I haven't done shit with my life. So with my cousin passing, it kind of catapulted me into just doing things and just trying not to give a fuck about the thing that I'm doing, to try to give as less fucks as possible, because people are going to judge no matter what I do. It might be my own family, it might be friends, it might be myself, it might be what I assume my friends are judging, or like, when I say friends, I mean like people on Facebook, because I am, of course, nervous about sharing this on Facebook and social media in general. Like, there's nothing I could really do, because like if I'm going to sit here and stop, then I'm going to be sad. And I'd rather face criticism, judgment, critique than, please them, because that's how social media has taught us, social media wants us to kind of fit into this algorithm, this mold that may not be genuine to all of us. And so I'd rather just face that. And I may not even face anything, like the same people who are listening now may be the same ones who will continue listening to me up until, episode 100. And I'll be fine with that, honestly. Because, if I'm, if y'all like what I'm saying, then I'll keep talking. I keep thinking that things are just going to turn out terribly after I, share this with quote unquote the world. But I doubt it. It's more than likely it's just going to be, it's going to, there's going to get a lot of views or listens for like the first couple of episodes, and people are probably just going to fall off, and, just me, I guess, being realistic. But at the same time, things can turn out to be great. Like maybe I'd get even more listeners or more consistent listeners, and that's actually really cool. And I hope this like inspires other people to, if they're thinking about starting a podcast or a vlog or anything, to actually kind of pursue it, because it is a lot of fun. And I'll definitely be listening to yours, because one of my favorite podcasters is someone whom I've mentioned, Gil, who was my friend who I met this year, who really pushed me into starting a podcast. he has his own podcast that I really enjoy. And one of the things I really enjoy about it, and it's sort of inspired like the way I do my podcast, is that it's kind of a podcast blog of his life. Like he shares a lot of personal, intimate things, and it's just really cool to just message him about that. Be like, hey, are you like, what's going on? I heard, from your podcast, this, and that. And it made me realize that a lot of us don't really have space to just talk a lot, for lack of a better, way of explaining it. A lot of us don't really have a platform, or like a place rather, where we can just say our thoughts without interruption. Most of the time when we're having a conversation with friends or family, we tend to get interrupted, or we have to fit what's been going on with us into like a really short like nugget, especially if you're talking to someone who interrupts a lot, or if you feel like you're just talking a lot, because we can sometimes feel self-conscious of that, or we can feel as though, the other person may not want to listen long. So we're just going to kind of shorten what we want to say. So like, from listening to Gil's podcast, it made me like really appreciate that this exists, because now I get to like know like his full thoughts, instead of just having like a conversation with him where he probably feels like, he needs to cut whatever he's trying to say short. I get to hear like, okay, this is really what's going on with him. And I think that's what we get from, like long form interviews with celebrities as well. Like there are people who really love Joe Rogan because they get to hear everything he has to say. It makes it easier for, like short clips to, get used and passed around and be like, oh, he's racist. Oh, he's a Nazi sympathizer or whatever. Like I actually don't even listen to Joe Rogan, but I'm just using him as an example because he's just, very controversial. But for those people who actually listen to Joe Rogan, a lot of people are just kind of like, when they talk to people who don't listen to Joe Rogan, they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, he's not like this at all. And it's low-key embarrassing because I've definitely been on the side of, as someone who doesn't listen to Joe Rogan, critiquing Joe Rogan. And, I was rightfully like criticized. I was like, you know what? I actually don't know what to even say because I don't know anything about him really. So who am I to say? Granted, we all do this, like there's controversy about celebrities and, famous people, billionaires, etc. and so forth all over the place. And then they make small snippets and we just are quick to judge and, quick to criticize and, just either cancel them or just completely stop listening to them based off of something that they may, based off like a 2-minute thing that they said from like a 2-hour podcast. So I feel as though it would be really cool if, more of my friends had podcasts so I can just really hear what is going on. I'd love to just hear what they've been thinking, what they've been doing, how life has been treating them while I'm just like, working. And it would just sort of feel like, in a way, like a conversation, but like a conversation where I can actually really and truly listen rather than feeling like I have to interject while they're still trying to get like their thoughts together to actually like formulate what they're trying to say. I know that those who have, listened to me, I'm sure have been wondering like, you probably wonder like, when am I going to get to the point exactly? Or maybe my thoughts don't seem too strung together well enough. I've spoken to friends who have listened to my podcast. They would, comment, say like, hey, I loved it. I'll be like, you sure? I feel like I wasn't making any sense. And they'll say, no, you've made perfect sense. I'm like, okay, if you say so. Even right now, I don't feel like I'm making sense. But, I guess I just need to, ignore that thought in my head, because I'm sure that thought could really become a bigger thought that becomes like a form of resistance, where I'm like, what's the point of me even continuing this podcast, because people don't understand what I'm even trying to say. I like to call that kind of thought process where I just like say negative things to myself my asshole brain. My therapist says it's depression. And I guess it's true, because that's kind of what depression does. And my friend was saying this the other day about how our brains formulate a story, and we notice gaps in our story, and our brain tries to fill in those gaps so the story makes sense. For example, let's say you've been texting back and forth with, this guy that you've been seeing, and they don't text you back for like 2 hours, and that seems to be a little bit abnormal of them. Like your asshole brain might fill in like a gap, thinking like, oh, he's probably texting other girls, or oh, he's probably gonna never text me again, or oh, he's et cetera and so forth. Like, y'all know all the bullshit. Or if you had like, a not so asshole-ish brain, a good brain, a nice brain, you'd be like, oh, maybe he's just busy. Maybe he saw the text, meant to respond, got caught up with something, and then, because the notification is gone, he forgot to text back, whatever. But our brain needs to fill in something, because when we have like a missing gap, it's kind of not good. Well, depending on how your brain is wired. For some of you, it might be like fantastic, but for me, I definitely fill in gaps, and some of those gaps aren't really the best. I try to forcefully fill in the gaps with good things, and then my asshole brain like digs those fillings out and puts in another filling, like an evil dentist. It's like, no, you deserve more cavities. Your teeth deserve to rot with sad stories that you tell yourself. Honestly, like, creating this podcast does kind of help me with my depression. And I've noticed that it helps me because I'm afraid to do it, or I get really reluctant in doing it. So I really try to just force myself and like sit my butt in front of the computer, in front of the mic, and just hit record, even when I'm not ready. And I got to remind myself there's never going to be a time when I am constantly ready. And when I tell you that my brain is like, just the definition of resistance, even when I'm like sitting in front of, the mic, and Adobe Audition is up, and I have like my talking points. Yes, I actually do have talking points. Thank you very much. I will be like looking at my phone. I'll be scrolling through TikTok. I have this really annoying habit where I'm like, I'll start at 2. I'll start at 2:15, or start at 2:30. I'll start at 2:35. I'll start at 2:40. And the next thing you know, it's like 5:30. And I'm like, damn it. It's like I've been, I went up, I stood up, got like some snacks, watched a little bit of TV, drinking my gallon of water because I have to go see my trainer. So it's like, oh shit, I got to go drink all this motherfucking water. And then it's like, oh, now I got to go pee. Now I got to go use the bathroom. And then that just like adds up time when I just really just need to sit my ass down and just hit record. Even if I'm ready or not, it's like, well, bitch, you're whether you're ready or not, you got to start. And it's the only thing that's can like really help me just like, I guess ground myself. But it's also fun to just have, I guess, like something to do. As as plain as that may sound, it's a fun thing to do. Like it's something that I actually truly enjoy. And if any of you have ever thought about, starting something like this, I'd highly recommend. I know I've said this before. I just want to reiterate that because I would really love to hear like just your thoughts on life. And if you would like to be a guest on my podcast, definitely let me know. I would love to have you on. And yeah, and then we could just talk and, shoot the breeze and chew the fat and any other idiom for conversation. So, this is the end of the first season. I know, cry, cry, boo hoo. I'll only be gone for like a month, and then I'll, hopefully it'll be a month. Please force me to come back if you find it's like January 20th and you're like, Leandra, where the hell are you? Yeah, definitely get me back. But I just want to take the month off, holidays and all that's December. And I wanted to, really start and get back in January. Just a, new year, new fresh start. I'm just going to take this time off to, just like try to really truly figure out like the direction of this podcast and everything. I like the direction that it is now. It's just like, I just want to, for season 2, I want to, definitely try some more things. And, have some of y'all wonderful folks on, some guests on. And, we're going to really get this thing going. Once again, thank you all for listening. You have been wonderful. You have been amazing. I'll see you all next season, and definitely hit me up on the socials, on the texts, on the Discords, on the emails, however the hell you need to contact me, because all of you know me, hopefully. Unless I have like a random listener, which would be fucking awesome. But definitely hit me up and let me know if you want to, be on an episode for next season. And we'll do it. We'll get that shit done. All right. Y'all have a happy holiday, and I'll see y'all in January.